Light is on.
Light is on. Item number 2, discussion regarding House Bills 2903 and 2904, providing possible funding opportunities for additional school resource officers.
So, handful of weeks ago, just prior to the discovery of the bills in question, staff was approached by some PTA folks asking about, hey, what would we need to do to bring in more school resource officers? Their request specifically, they have 17 elementary schools in Norman Public Schools that do not have school resource officers. So we scratched our heads and thought it's funding is a part of the deal, but staffing is a much bigger part of the deal. While we're mentally exercising how long we think it would take if council said, yes, go forth and do that, to get back to full staffing, which we think will happen in about January. So PD will be back at full staff at 181. And then to add 17 more is probably a 3-year process. So not an immediate solution for that need. While those conversations are starting to bubble, the mayor discovers that, hey, this bill has been signed into law that creates a pilot project for the whole state of Oklahoma and sticks $50 million in the budget for a 3-year pilot. The way the state legislature decided to distribute the dollars, it would be roughly $98,000 per school district per year for 3 years. And then the Department of Ed said, we need to take our administrative cut off the top. So that's about $90,000 a year per district for 3 years. Well, $90,000 in a big giant district like Moore or Tulsa, it's invisible. For little tiny school districts, they'll probably use things to improve security like cameras, new door locks, maybe get rid of a couple doors and move people through more secured ingress, egress. For us, we thought, how far down the road does that get us in helping support the SRO program? Well, $90,000 is a little less than the cost of one.
Yeah.
In that conversation, the district is recognizing, yes, they want to utilize those dollars for additional SRO efforts. The school districts are the recipients of those dollars in those bills that have now been signed into law. And just to kind of, we pay attention to the local stuff and the statewide stuff and the regional stuff and the national stuff. The Texas legislature approved a bill last legislative session that said there will be a school resource officer and armed security personnel at every school in the state of Texas. So I'm thinking it's coming this way. Well, it almost got here. It got to a pilot project, which tells us what the leanings are of the legislature. And then last weekend, I heard a story that there is a federal conversation about making it mandatory nationwide. And you can kind of recognize there's probably a bipartisan solution in that, because everybody wants school safety. It doesn't matter how you vote. Everybody wants their kids to be safe in school. So we do see kind of momentum maybe shifting that way. It'd be better if it came with more funding. But we definitely wanted to bring this bill to your attention and the desires of Norman Public Schools to expand.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, the Texas law or bill proposal, whatever it is, the funding part. So if they're going to require SROs to be in every school, is each district having to come up with how to pay for that mandate? Or because just with our 17 elementary schools, that's almost $2 million, right?
Oh, yeah.
100,000 per officer is what I think, right? So, maybe not. It's not out of the realm, especially for safety, I suppose. But I would imagine a lot of school districts might have a hard time.
And even
doing that at every school.
Yeah, where did the personnel come from to add that many bodies with that capability, that training? If they're all certified and carry guns and they're on the right radio system and everything, it's definitely not an overnight fix. It's years in the making, but it all kind of starts with that first step and what that direction looks like. The State Department of Ed does not yet have all of the application procedures put together yet. They're getting close. I think end of the month, they're supposed to be rolling out,
By Friday.
oh, by Friday.
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah. We tried to get a copy of the application. They're testing it, and then they'll have that ready for superintendents on Friday. Should go out.
I know all the superintendents are meeting and having these exact same conversations.
Councilmember?
So, I mean, I think this is great for NPD, or sorry, MPS, because I think that's been the hang up, right, with partly getting more SROs in the school was their portion of the money. So I guess what is the proposal from NPS on, like, they want to use their money for SROs, and then what does that do on our side in terms of like how many they want to do over the 3-year period, and what is our funding obligation from, I guess, PSST? Is that where that would come from, or like what is, I guess, on the city side? Like, I think it's good for the school district. That's how they want to send. So we're a partner in that. So like, what is, I guess, our piece of
In
funding.
recognizing the long lead up time to actually being able to expand, if money's not the issue, just how long does it take to get the bodies? A conversation is that they have an SRO relationship with the sheriff's office at Dimensions. And that could be an expansion during a ramp up period. They're able to hire a different caliber of professional than we are, and they can get there faster. But I think the long-term vision is they really appreciate the level of professionalism that Norman Police Department delivers to schools. And it's not every officer who can serve in that capacity, and we want seasoned officers in the schools just because of the things they're more situationally aware of. So we think there's a path for Norman Public Schools to help meet those earlier staffing needs in an expansion of services through the sheriff's office. But long-term, I know their desire is to expand the relationship with us. That their discretionary funding, and this is just interesting conversation with superintendents, more public schools, bigger district, and apparently with the development of Amazon distribution centers, families with school-aged children, those numbers have really grown in the Moore School District. So they've got big giant cash reserves and their budgets are growing, and Norman Public Schools have been flat budgetarily. When the state said there will be a big teacher raise, the state did not fund the teachers' increase in retirement cost and all the other costs that go along with payroll that ate into what Norman Public Schools has as discretionary revenue on an annual basis. So they're losing the capacity to continue to fund SROs, and we think mandates may be coming where SROs are gonna have to happen, and I mean, the thought that they could pay half for 17 more is probably not realistic.
Yeah. I'm interested to see, I guess, from your perspective, like, what does this look like? Are you in conversation with NPS about this potential money and how you'll scale up? And I mean, because I'm assuming that our SROs go through our academy and or are get moved into that position from already being within positions within
Yes.
our police department. So I guess maybe just talk to us a little bit about like what that might look like.
Yeah, I think we would phase that in, probably something like 4 a year going forward until we can get up to the number. We still have 4 in PSST to do currently, so that could be our first 4, and then moving forward, we could see what we can do. I think the idea is, and we'll get with county, we'll do some more discussion work, but we'll have to get with county and see how that may work out, if they're gonna put SROs in there, where they're getting that 17 bodies from. And then what are they gonna be? Are they gonna be security guards, or are they gonna be actual SROs that take care of issues and take reports and work those cases? And then there's, the data side of that, if they're in part of the schools and we're in part of the schools. Communications, they're not on the same radio system. So there's a lot of stuff to work out with them being in there, but we can do that moving forward.
I mean, I would personally rather than be NPD, like, because I know that, how we run that program, and I mean, like you're saying, like they're on different channels, like this is an extra layer of, I guess, work that it's gonna provide or that you guys are gonna have to do. So, I mean, I feel more comfortable with it being our own officers that we're elevating into those positions.
I think we all agree. And then that, and I think it's, and I know I'm interrupting.
No, you're fine.
And I think it's nice of the sheriff, it's good management of the sheriff to be helping us in this stead and while we get there. And so we can move ahead without having to, if we take 17 guys away from MPD, we're getting toast. So it's a wonderful idea. Yes, sir, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's. What I understand is like the city government would be taking over funding and responsibility for the security of the public school system.
Well, I think it's
Because of-
kind of viewed that way right now, even though we don't have people stationed at the elementary schools, we respond to the elementary schools
Yeah.
fairly
I do,
regularly.
Anthony could probably speak to it, but last year I paid about 3,100 hours of overtime to have somebody come in and work at elementaries. Now, that's not somebody at every elementary, but that's one officer roving between maybe 4 elementaries or 5 elementaries. Just so we could have somebody there, because there is a big push from a lot of parents in various schools that want to see us. So I was trying to, make that happen or help them out as much as I felt I could. But there is a huge push to get them there, and I think we could get there. It's just gonna have to be phased in.
Yeah, the original PSST proposal I recall was 2 at each high school, 1 at each of the 4 middle schools, and then 4 that would rove between the 17 elementary schools. And so, and I know that's the path we're kind of still on currently, but I do wonder about the financial ability to add 1 for each school, even looking years down the road. And if MPS isn't able to contribute at all to it, is there I assume there probably is other precedent of cities where the city government pays for the
Absolutely.
funding, pays for the security of the public school entity?
And of course, if, depending on how this state legislation after the pilot morphs, and whether or not federal legislation actually comes into play. So there's a lot of potential paths to follow. In this particular instance, that 3-year pilot window happens to end about the time the debt service is paid off in PSST, about 3 years. And what that frees up is the debt service payment.
It does not.
How much debt service do we stop making after that bond's paid off?
That's about a $2 million a year debt service payment.
That will cease.
Then it goes into the general fund.
Right, then all PSST dollars, but it'll mean expenses against it have gone down about $2 million, about Councilmember Holman's estimate for what it would
And then
take
at
to
the
staff
same-
up like that.
Almost closes the gap, but the gap will still exist.
Correct.
PSST does not pay for its costs.
Not yet,
It will
yeah.
not. It will not. When that will not.
I'm trying, I'm working them.
Hear him.
So I will say that one of the things the state legislation did in House Bill 2903 is they set up a revolving fund, I think anticipating there could be other funding from the federal government. And so all of those grants, other monies received from the state, from the United States government for school security projects and school resource officers are going to go into this fund. And so I definitely think there's an intent that this may be a longer term
'Cause it would-
program, whether this or using federal dollars, but it would still, all that money would still have to be spent on maintaining your school resource officer program or security enhancements to your facilities.
It used the word pilot in there. Is this an application for seizure funds? That's just an off the top of my head thing.
I think the seizure funds now have to be, I'm looking at Chief to help me remember, used for, is it drug related? Is that what the DA is requiring now?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I think we could stretch into that, because officers may do things in schools and,
Yeah.
There are no drugs in normal school. So, well, I'm just trying to think of any other funding source, because to me, the answer is, the question is, do we want security for our kids? And the answer is yes. I mean, nobody's
I
gonna,
just think seizure funds aren't a stable revenue source of,
Well, that's
for
true.
salaries and things like that, yeah.
I guess we could use them, the DA could decide to not give them to us anymore, I guess, but we have found that we could use them for anything that we want to.
I
DA
think,
has rules, and if we don't abide by his rules, he may not want to give us those forfeiture funds anymore. But,
and his
when we had
rules
this
are
discussion-
becoming more limiting,
Okay.
so.
so that could be
I think we're
one
the
way,
same for
but
him.
just at the same time that we would be doing this, still would be trying to fund additional just police officers
Yeah.
in the department too, outside of SROs, so.
We do think the public safety study that we've received responses to the RFP. A couple of them look good.
I'm actually holding it right here.
There you go. So I have a feeling what it's going to say, especially move to the SCC and understanding what is coming our way, there will be a recommendation. They're going to say you need more officers than what you have right now to make that happen. And it's just a matter of, yeah, some of those officers could very well be serving in Norman Public Schools. That's, they don't work for 12 months in Norman Public Schools. They may work for 9 months in Norman Public Schools, and they're on patrol and doing other things. And they're available for game days, and they're available for other activities too. And it was interesting in the conversation with some PTA folks on the subject, what conclusion they reached was there are parents who could afford to write a check and put an armed security guard in their school. But they thought the best approach is to have uniform support at all the schools and not have an have-not situation. And I thought, wow, what a wonderful recognition that was, to not try to solve the problem for my kid in my school, but to say, what do our schools need, and have everybody have the same level of comfort.
Oh, go for it.
I was
Continue.
gonna say, the problem with that too would be like, okay, you're gonna pay $100,000 for 1 year for one officer, and then your kid's not at that school next year,
Matriculates.
so.
Yeah, you're not paying.
I mean, parents are gonna collect $100,000 a year to pay for a
but
contingent.
that's also the same path for us. As we start
Right.
on this and having everyone in there, we're kind of committing the world to, yes, we're going to take over that responsibility, and we're committing officers for 30 years to be able to do this, long past when we'll be in office. And so I think it's a good thing. I'm fully there, but I think we need that realization that we're driving down that road.
Agreed.
Yes, sir.
Do we have the ability to run an academy geared just for SROs?
Oh,
And I ask for a couple reasons. One, I mean, this is obviously a very specialized officer, and somebody that's got a passion for working with kids, I would think. And so being able to recruit that kind of person would be positive. But it's the second reason, probably more important, sounds like this would be a statewide hiring bonanza on SROs.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be great to get ahead of the curve and get the best of the best, and not just get the bottom of the barrel of kind of, what's left. I don't know what the logistics of something like that are in terms of, you're kind of phasing in, scaling up plan, but
Yeah, I mean, generally, we think about somebody coming through the academy, working in the street,
okay,
then going to SRO training,
okay,
and then we put them into school. So they have some experience out here dealing with people and different types of people. Then they learn about being an SRO, then we put them in.
okay. Could you do things backwards, the other way around, if you knew
We could.
day
I'm
one that
sure
officer was
there's-
going to be in the
there's
school?
People that, in areas that, and maybe the sheriff, that's what they're gonna do.
Okay,
So yeah, you could.
okay.
To that point though, like there's an opportunity though for you to identify people who are currently on staff to be elevated into SRO positions that then you have to backfill with
Yes.
new academy members. So like we could do that within our own process right now, and we already have really good people that we could elevate and
Absolutely.
move into those trainings, right?
Yes.
I mean, so like there's a way to do it, and we could scale it without having to have like this, have it go backwards. Because I understand why you're doing it the way that you are, just in terms of training and
Yes.
experience and all of that kind of stuff. Because I'd rather have somebody who is trained and then has experience going into the schools to protect the kids.
Difference between a young guy coming out.
For sure.
Yeah.
And somebody that has a little experience.
I just want to make sure we're ahead of the curve on
Yeah,
this.
I think that's
really it.
fair.
Absolutely.
I was just curious, so has NPS said for sure that they want to spend their 96,000 that way, or?
In my last conversation with Dr. Migliorino, the school's bond projects over the last 2 bond cycles, they said we've addressed largely all of the physical security needs on every school site. So they feel very good from an infrastructure standpoint. That missing piece is somebody at each school site with situational awareness. And that, I mean, there's something about the presence. The other thing we actually chatted about is, as we're getting ready to surplus out old cop cars, the district said, we'll take over the maintenance of those cop cars if we can keep them parked at the school sites. And they've got a big fleet, I mean, all the school buses they maintain, plus a bunch of pickup trucks and everything else. That would be a great use of some surplus vehicles, and it is a visual deterrent. If somebody's thinking about doing something naughty, to drive by and already see the car sitting in the driveway.
Crown
You don't know if it's just a car or not. Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
So they're probably not likely to pick one of the other infrastructure upgrades that they could
Correct.
choose. And this is 3 years. What happens at the end of 3 years if it peters out?
Nobody knows. I would say it would be very hard to go backwards and say, we have school resource officers now, but since the state didn't go forward, we're out. That would be a tough pill. I think parents would grow very attached to that SRO program very quickly in the elementary schools. So once, I think if we decide we're going, it's probably just a new way of doing business going forward.
Dr. Nick had told me that in those entries, it's single point entry. That's hardened, it's basically got ballistic glass in it so that you can see who's there, but they can't do what they did. I don't know what the state was, but somebody shot out the glass in the entryway and then got access. They can't do that here. He's already working. At least that's what I understood. Further questions, or do you need a way forward?
What we'll do is, next Tuesday night pre-council conference, we'll have a brief conversation. I know Dr. Nick's working on his side and a conversation with the sheriff's office to see just how quickly these things could happen. So we'll bring you back some additional information next Tuesday night and seek additional direction.
All good?
Excellent.
Well, we are adjourned. How about that?
Like it.